I've asked you to give us your 3 best draft hits of 2020. Or kind of, if you can give us where you had them ranked and where they went overall, and then I'll give mine as well.
All right. So we'll go back. I would say 2020 is a good starting point for this as well, because it's 4 years, obviously gives you a ton of time to evaluate these players in the NBA. But also, that was the first year for me personally that I really got into the draft. I technically did a big board in 2019, but I think it was only 50 prospects. Quite frankly, I didn't know what I was doing yet. But 2020, being locked in our houses for a year, we had over a year to evaluate these prospects. I really got into it that cycle. I really started to love the NBA draft and developed a scouting process and philosophies for myself that year. And I mean, I think that is borne out in the numbers here, because I absolutely killed that draft, James. I don't know about you, but I mean, I think this is probably my best hit relative to their consensus opinion and where they were drafted. I had Desmond Bane at number 16 in that draft. He was drafted 30th overall. He has since developed into an extremely effective two-way wing, very efficient three-point shooter, borderline all-star player. I don't know if he's really going to be contending for them in the way that he has in I think it was last year, but before this year, that he was right on the cusp of making the all-star team. I don't know if that's going to be a consistent thing for him, but he is a very clear, good third option type player. Easily could be the third best player on maybe not a championship team, but a very good playoff team, at least, as we've already seen with the Memphis Grizzlies. So to me, that is easily my best one. I had him. That was the lowest good player really that I had in that draft to me, and I had him I had him 14 spots above where he got drafted, and even that seems to be too low in hindsight.
There was a Bane hive at the time. I remember there was a strong Desmond Bane hive. I chose not to buy in. I was thinking it was pre-draft hype. I think I just had him kind of ranked around where he went. I think I still had him ranked 26th to 27th, but that was actually low compared to consensus. But yeah, 16, almost having Desmond Bane in the lottery. That was quite some heights right there. So it's a good pick.
Well, what's your best hit from 2020, James?
I would probably say Tyrese Maxey 11th. I think he ended up going 20th for the 76ers, just won most improved player, NBA All-Star. He had a down season, I think, at Kentucky. And I dug into the high school film that year. I really liked the eye test, even though some of the percentages and numbers weren't great. So I think having Tyrese Maxey as a 11th overall on my board, I feel like I was pretty high above consensus, which probably had him somewhere in that 14 to 18 or to 14 to 20 range. But I also know, because we spoke beforehand, Tyrese Maxey is also featuring quite highly on your list too.
I actually had him even higher than you did. I had Tyrese Maxey at number 9.
I had him thunder, why don't you?
I had him above James Wiseman. In hindsight, that is a snipe from your boy right here.
You take a lap of honor right there.
Right, I had James Wiseman at 11, I think, in that draft. That was too high in retrospect, even. But most people, very rarely was he outside the top 5, especially in the mainstream.
Yeah. I had him
strong contention to be number 2.
I had him 3 behind Ball and Edwards. I had Edwards 1, Ball 2. I feel pretty good about that. But yeah, I had Wiseman. I had Wiseman 3.
I had LaMelo number 1 in that draft, and for a year I was looking pretty damn good. Not so much anymore.
At least I got that one right.
My whole top 10 that year, I'm just going to run through it right now, was LaMelo Ball, Anthony Edwards, Onyeka Okongwu, Killian Hayes, extremely loud buzzer noise.
Me too.
Devin Vassell at 5, Isaac Okoro, Tyrese Halliburton, Denny Avdia, Tyrese Maxey, Cole Anthony. So that's and then you put Desmond Bane at 16. Every single good player in that class, apart from Jaden McDaniels, Peyton Pritchard, Emmanuel Quickley, and maybe Obi Toppin, I had in the top 16. So, I mean, the amount of time that we had to scout that class definitely benefited me. We should take a year and a half before every draft. and I'll just
The reason I'm
be
enjoying
like,
this is because you're a very humble person, and even I can see you're enjoying yourself right now, being like,
I
I
am.
nailed it.
I literally. It's so good. I had Isaiah Joe, number 22. He was drafted
Yeah.
49th. Is now one of the best shooters in the NBA. What's another good one here? Oh, I had
Can I?
Trey Jones outside the first round. Daniel Oturu, 41. Jamias Ramsey way outside the first round. Yeah,
Okay,
this is a good
we're
year for
getting
me.
into random guys now. People
Oh
don't
yeah,
even know
yeah,
who those
that's
folks
probably
are.
true. This is a little bit of it. Yeah, this is all G League
I'm
guys now. Which hey,
I'm gonna give you my 2 and 3. I had Patrick Williams, who went 4th overall to the Bulls, 16, and I'm really proud of that one
that's
because
a good one.
that gathered steam, and I
Oh
just
yeah,
never saw it. I never saw it. I didn't move him up. I didn't buy into the pre-draft hype, and I feel like that one's aged pretty well. So that was one that I'm glad I stayed where I was. And like Tyrese Halliburton, I had him 5th overall. He went 12th in the end. I actually think his like consensus was around 5 to 10, so I didn't think I was super high, but towards the top end, and it was a lot higher than he ended up going. And I kind of always just bought into like the intangibles, and some of the off-court intel with Halliburton was some of the best that I remember hearing, and I put a lot of credence into that, and it's done me well. So that's 2020 for our hits. What about our misses? We'll probably spend a little bit less time on these, but we're still holding ourselves accountable. Give me your misses of 2020.
all right. So Jaden McDaniels is a big one. I had him 43rd. He was drafted 28th, so it's not like he went super high, but obviously
Yeah.
would go top 5, maybe at least top 10 comfortably in a redraft. Killian Hayes, many other people were high on him wrongly, so he just never translated to the NBA really. My other biggest miss is Charlotte Hornets legend Grant Riller. I had him 19. He was drafted 56th, never played in a meaningful NBA minute. His knees fell apart. He had a shoulder injury. He's hooping out in China right now, but is not an NBA guy.
Yeah.
And if you put someone 19th on your big board, they have to be an NBA guy. So that one was wrong. I had Eli Hughes, number 20 as well. Also not an NBA guy. He's been in the G League his whole career. So those are my like big misses on players that just completely fizzled out, like that I believed in for no reason. What were your misses in 2020?
Yeah, I was right there with the Killian Hayes, but I mean, I feel like everyone missed on that. So it's
right,
not like
that's like a
alone.
collective miss.
Yeah,
like,
it's a collective
as a draft
miss.
society.
It's Killian Hayes' fault, not the draft.
There we go.
Fault.
Exactly.
What wasn't anyone's fault apart from mine was having Daniel Oturu ranked 17. I was very high on Minnesota big Daniel Oturu. I didn't understand why he was ranked where he was. He went 33rd, and I thought it was still too late. And yeah, he basically was like, I think didn't even make his rookie contract. That was a tough one. Devin Vassell, he was at 19. I had him. He got drafted 11th. He's developed into a good player here. And then Trey Murphy. Again, I just didn't think like the small school to Virginia. I just thought there was the late growth spurt. I thought there's just too much projection here. Like there's not enough actual substance. I had him ranked 33rd and he went 17th. And that I think is probably Daniel Oturu is my worst one, but Trey Murphy is probably like my biggest miss.
I think Trey Murphy was 2021, so I think you might be good on that one.
I've got the year mixed up. Well, that's fine. We'll copy and paste the answer for the next year.
All right, there we go. So only 2 misses in 2020 for you. Maybe you did just as well that year as I did, but
well, I did have Kira Lewis sick. That I can sub Trey Murphy out for Kira Lewis sick. Although he had injuries, he ended up going 11th in the end, but he had injuries. But we don't need to. No one will even probably know Kira Lewis is listening to this.
Yeah, right, exactly. All right, well, let's start off with the misses for 2021 since we're pretty close to it right now. What were your 3 misses for 2021? Trey Murphy obviously is one of them.
Yeah, Sharif Cooper, I'd ranked 17th, and he went undrafted, and is yet to really make the NBA. Again, a collective miss, I think, by the draft community. Some people had him higher than me. I think I was like, but that was a collective miss. Keon Johnson, again, another collective miss. I had him as a top 10 player. I love the defense, the shot making. Just is like a barely a rotation player. Went 21st overall on draft night after a disappointing season at Tennessee. And then I was never high in Buck, so I'm actually taking that as a bit of a win, but I was higher in Kai Jones. I think I had Kai I want to say 14 or so in that draft, and that obviously is not aged well either. So, yeah, those are my misses. I made a promise after the Sharif Keeper never to overrank undersized guards like ever again, and that was the line. I drew a line in the sand at that moment.
Yeah, Sharif taught me a lot about small guards too. I had Sharif Cooper 15th in that draft, so I'm right there with you. All of our misses were the same that year. I also had Keon Johnson, number 10. Trey Murphy, I had 34. One that I know you didn't miss on, though, that I did, is Alperen Şengün. I had him 16th, and he was drafted 16th, but that was way too low. Like, for me, for the NBA, like, he is a clear, like, top 7 pick at absolute worst in this class. Very good offensive center. I totally underestimated, like, I totally overestimated how much his athleticism would hinder him. He's also gotten taller since he came to the NBA, so that helps as well. But yeah, just a big miss on Şengün for me and for the entire NBA in 2021. That was not a great year for me overall. Like, I guess you could say Cade and Mobley as the 1 and 2 is a good starting point. Like, it's good to get the top of the draft right, but that's really all that went well for me. Like, I had Franz Wagner 11 below Keon Johnson. Book Night I had at 12, so I guess that counts. But then Kai Jones at 13, Jaden Springer at 17. Like, yeah, that was not a good one for me. But
if 2020 was your year, yeah,
right.
2020 was your year.
Off.
2021, I owned. Okay,
right.
I had Şengün 6th on my board. He went 16th. Tell me if you. I think this is a win, but people could probably look at it differently. I had Jonathan Kuminga 3rd on my board, behind Green and Cade Cunningham, and I don't think that's aged that badly now. Like, I think we really begin to see some of the Kuminga breakout stuff coming now, but some people might disagree with that. I had Jalen Johnson 8th on my board, who actually I'm feeling a lot better about. I actually waited to do this exercise until the Jalen Johnson breakout year, just for this very purpose, because otherwise it would have looked bad. But Jalen Johnson 8th looks great. I had Moses Moody down at 20th. I didn't see the lottery hype, and I think that was one that a lot of people were high on Moses Moody. They thought he was like the best shooting guard in the draft for some people. And this is one I'm really proud of. Herb Jones, I had solidly as a 1st-round pick at 26.
I remember that. You were like the foremost Herb Jones guy. Anybody that does draft work.
He went higher than most people thought. He went like 35 was actually higher than consensus.
Oh,
which was in the 40s. Like, and I'm really happy. So, like, nailed that Moody wasn't a lottery talent. Nailed Herb Jones to, like, it should be even higher, by the way. I wasn't high enough, but I was the highest probably of most people. So 2021, I feel, was good about my year.
Yeah, I mean, I had Herb Jones 46th, just below Joel Ayayi and Aaron Henry that year. So swing and a miss. Like,
you are stupid.
Yeah. Hey, in that regard, you are not wrong. So that one was not good for me. But where I did do pretty well in 2021, I had Davion Mitchell, number 23. He was drafted 9th. 23 might have been like too low per se, but obviously he was not worth a 9th pick either. Is just definitely going to be like a long.
I know what's coming next. It's his teammate. He's going to appear in this list, isn't he? On the other side, the misses.
For which,
Jared Butler.
Yeah. No, actually, I guess that would count too. I had him. Yeah, I had a lot of misses this year. I had Jared Butler 20, and he is not an NBA player. Jesus, I had 1, 2, 3 people who are not NBA players, like 4 non-NBA players in my top 20 that year. Keon Johnson, Kai Jones. I guess Kai Jones counts, but and then Jaden Springer not Jaden Springer, Usman Garuba and Jared Butler and Sharif Cooper. Like, that was an awful run in 2021 for me, but I did get a little bit better in
weird scouting year with COVID, I will say. Like, we still hadn't seen people play properly. It was like the quick draft year. It was all like strange, as 2020 was as well. But you didn't have as much time because the 2020 draft was late, if you remember.
Right.
You didn't have as much time to scout it. And again, we didn't have a combine and all that kind of stuff. So it was still 2021 was still a strange draft year.
I guess having James Bouknight at 12 would maybe count as a hit. I mean, people thought he was going to go in the top 5. There were plenty of people that had him ranked in the top 5, but as we all know intimately well, James Bouknight would not have been worth that top 5.
Where
pick
did you
that
have
he was.
Buck? I think we had him ranked I had him 20.
I had him 12. So I mean 20, that one was definitely right on your part.
Maybe
12, I
that's
feel like
one of my wins as well. A Buck
yeah,
Knight.
no, that for sure. If you had him 20, then definitely. Because there were people that had him super, super high, like
Oh yeah.
within the top 5. Like most people had him in the top 10 somewhere.
His draft over under was 6.5, I think.
Yeah, that's
or 7.5, and I definitely bet the under, and I was very wrong. Okay, let's move on to 2023. Give us some of your hits from 2023. So 2022. I missed the year.
Okay.
Let's go 2022.
I was gonna say this was another good one for me. My best hit, I think, is Jalen Duren. I had him number 6. He was drafted 13th overall. I mean, where you want to place a player like in that class, I feel like now we're getting to the point where it's like a little bit too recent to be like, this is a top 3 player, top 5 player. So there's still some work to be done here. But I think having him like that high over players like Jeremy Sohan, like Jonathan Davis is another guy that a lot of people really like that has been not very good so far. He's going to be another one of my hits technically, but I also had Jaden Hardy. I had him at number 17. He was drafted 37th. I think he's pretty firmly established himself as at least like a bench player in the league, depending on, maybe not for the Dallas Mavericks specifically anymore, but I'm sure some team would be able to give him a role somewhere. And then another one is I had Ousmane Dieng, 26th. He was drafted 11th. He has flashed almost nothing in the NBA. Like the best stretches of play from him have come almost exclusively in the G League. He's still only played in 72 games over 2 seasons and has been terribly inefficient from 3 and just hasn't really popped at all. So that one I'm going to go down as a hit, even though it was me, denigrating somebody and having them very low. But I will say that I was right about that one with Ousmane Dieng. The Thunder significantly overdrafted him at number 11. But if there's a team to overdraft players in that time period, it was definitely the Thunder with their 9,000 first-round picks.
Yeah. Yeah. I was similar with you with Dieng and Jaden Hardy, actually. We have them ranked similar areas, so I guess I'll take those two. Ochai Baji went lottery. I had him in like the late teens. I think I had him 18, 19. I think we could probably take the win on that one. I think my biggest one is probably Peyton Watson. I had him 20th on my board. He was going to be a second-round pick. He was actually taken 30th in the end, but that was thought to be a reach at the time. So I like Peyton Watson, and we can see the impact he's having now in his sophomore year, basically, over in Denver, just playing some incredible basketball in the playoffs here. And then the other one is Jake LaRavia, who was another like pre-draft hype merchant who tricked everybody into buying in. I had him ranked 29th. He ended up going 19th, and he has done absolutely nothing to this point. But some people had him like, he was one who was like, people were all trying to trade up to get him. I remember Jake LaRavia on draft night, and there was like an arms race for LaRavia, which was looks pretty silly looking back on it now.
Yeah, I guess that would count as one for me as well. I had him 27th. I have one that I wasn't super high on him, so I can't really take too much credit for this, is Vince Williams Jr. Like he was not somebody that was really on draft boards at all. He ended up getting picked in like the mid-second round, probably a little bit later than 40 by Memphis. He has since graduated off the 2-way contract and is now like what I would imagine is at least a rotation player or on the cusp of being one going forward. So I guess that count, even though I only had him 40, like I did consider him as somebody that was
counts.
worth an NBA shot, and many people didn't have him on their board at all.
And I thought about counting him for me, so you definitely count him. I think I'm probably
I'll take Vince Williams then. And he was like a small school guy, like really unheralded prospect, and I just really bought into his defense and 2-way like feel for the game like very early. So I'll take one. But this is probably my worst miss in relative to like how good they are is Walker Kessler. I had at 52. I had zero hope that he was going to be a like anything more than like a bit player in the NBA. I didn't believe in the shooting at all, which to be fair, like he took a pretty significant step back, I think, from his rookie year, especially if you ask a Utah Jazz fan about that. Like, I would say that they probably he got worse from his rookie year to now. But obviously, he's like a long-term NBA player, could start on many teams, is a really good shot blocker, rebounder, and interior player just in general, even if the shooting and ball skills are never going to come around. But yeah, 52 was bad. And he was drafted 22nd, and that's probably still a little bit too low in hindsight.
Yeah, I had him early second round. I think it was 34 for me. So again, still a miss for me because he's clearly could start for some teams as a defensive anchor. He's a very good defensive player. Okay, let's do misses. I think this might be my worst year. I'm going to get started. I'm just going to get started with number 1 overall. I had Jabari Smith Jr. ranked as the number 1 prospect, and I have no idea how I did that. Like when you watch now Paolo Banchero, like in what world did I think Jabari Smith was a better player? And you know what? We talked last week on the Saar Topic debate, and this was actually what almost played into my head. Like Jabari Smith was quite mechanical, didn't have a great feel for the game, but had like great measurables, played with great motor, like shot the ball really well from 3 that year. And Paolo was obviously like the more kind of like skilled, talented, natural, smoother, sexier player. And I took like the defense, the shooting, the mechanical, like I took that over just like, yeah, but Paolo just has so much more in his like bag and he's able to go to and can do so much more. And that actually kind of built that argument into one of them just has a much higher baseline skill level than the other. And that's what brought me into thinking putting Topic ahead of Saar, even if you take out the measurables and Paolo Banchero's dodgy defense. But yeah, it's not a big one, but I still kick myself at that one because I looked at it long and hard. And I like if I'd had Chet on top or Banchero on top, that would have been fine. But Jabari Smith, I don't feel good about.
I will say though, I that is probably the most recent draft that like the top of that draft was more highly regarded than 2024, but that was like a real debate. Like there was very evenly split, I would say, between those 3 players. You were definitely not alone in having Jabari at 1. I had him at number 2. I had Chet at number 1, but I obviously had Paul 3rd, and you could easily make an argument that he's the best of those 3 players right now, especially as he's the number 1 option on a playoff team, whereas Chet is obviously playing maybe the 3rd option, but is at least like the 2nd best player on the team on a good night. So, I mean, yeah, another miss for me that year actually is his teammate, Jalen Williams. I had him number 21. He was drafted 12th. Really good player. But there were people that were lower on him than I was, to be fair. Like 21 wasn't like low. Like there were people that didn't think he was really like much of a like really worth like a guaranteed contract or was going to be like much of an NBA guy. I feel like
he started in the 2nd round. He was in the 50s and 40s.
Oh yeah,
like around the time of the draft combine, even. And then if you remember, he played in the draft combine and he skyrocketed his stock. And by the end of the Chicago draft combine, he went from a 2nd round pick, like maybe a 2-way player, to like all of a sudden he was guaranteed 1st round. And then by draft night, he was getting buzzed in the lottery. I had him ranked 15. And even I think I was too low on him now, right? You look back and see what he's doing. I had him as one of my misses. But like it was his climb. It's very rare that those like pre-draft hype people really pay off quite to that level. But he was one of them. It was very, very real.
Yeah, he has been. I mean, you look back on that now, like he probably goes 4th behind all those 3. He might even go ahead of Jabari Smith Jr. in that class in a redraft right now.
Yeah.
So Jalen Williams deserves a lot of credit for how well that the early stages of his career have gone so far in comparison to what was expected of him, even going into his sophomore or junior year, I think, at Santa Clara.
Yeah. Other misses for me are Johnny Davis 9th. He went 10th. Ouch. He is not an NBA player.
Nope.
Had a good freshman year at Wisconsin or sophomore year. It just never translated. It was a freshman year, actually. And I don't think he was on draft boards to start the year as much and then played really well and fought his way onto it. And it's kind of a little bit of a warning of when that player has just one good year out of nowhere, which is kind of like, oh, we didn't expect this. Like sometimes just be a little bit cautious because it can be a product of environment. It can be, I think he had a good start to the year and then it's cooled off. It was, just a good couple of months and was able to get drafted in the lottery based on that. Julian Champagny, I'd ranked 27th and he went undrafted. That hurts.
I love Julian Champagny too. I had him 33. Him and Alondes Williams.
I wonder if that was one of those ones where he chose to go undrafted so he could sign where he wanted, which sometimes does happen in the second round. The one that I'm most frustrated about of all my misses, and it's because I watched this guy so much, is Christian Braun.
Me too. That one's the one that pisses me off more than any of these.
I had him ranked 39th. When he went 21st, I could not effing believe it. I was like, he was like a role player on a Kansas team. He basically shot some threes, got out in transition, and that was it. He has not got anything like the defensive skill set to be able to play skinny, overmatched. I even 39, I think at the time, I was almost peer pressured into putting him there because people had him higher. But I watched so much Christian Braun over 2-3 years at Kansas, and I just never took him seriously as a real legitimate NBA rotational player, and he's really proven to be that. At least in Denver, he looks that way.
Yeah, I had him 42nd, so I was even lower. And yeah, looking back on it though, is he didn't really pop until he was a junior. He was good, I think, as a sophomore. When I think it was the year before Kansas won the national championship, he won on that Kansas team as a junior. And that was when he firmly established himself as an NBA player. I feel like it's harder to trust guys that don't pop until late. And they don't come into college as this guy's a prospect, but he might need a couple of years to develop. It wasn't really when Christian Braun was being recruited that it was okay, this guy, maybe he's a one and done if he's good enough, but he might need a couple of years, that type of thing. It was only he came on the scene that third year and established himself very
in a great
quickly,
situation that was complimentary.
Exactly.
Yeah. So
many transition finishes too that I was I feel like he's hard to trust. But looking back on it, obviously not. There was enough there.
It's fine.
Yeah, very dumb.
Any other misses for 22, or should we move on to our last year here?
I don't think so. Let's get to 2023, the freshest of the class, so we're basically looking back on what we said about a year ago. So see how well that's aged.
Well, I'm going to start in an obvious place, and it's with Brandon Miller. Because, and I said this, I did this several times. I had Brandon Miller ranked 2 all the way through the draft process over Scoot Henderson. Relatively late on, I shifted it, and I shifted it for one reason only, and I made this very clear. It was not due to the film. I still said if it was a video game and I was drafting, I would draft Brandon Miller second overall, right? But it was down to the off-court, ongoing investigation, legal stuff. It was a time where the Hornets were dealing with the Miles Bridges situation, uncertainty. There was a real issue around culture in the Charlotte Hornets dressing room, and it was just do we want to add more drama into that situation? And that is basically what made me level on the Scoot side. But in terms of my basketball evaluation, which really is now it's easy to look back and say, oh, well, nothing ever happened. Well, it's easy to say that now. It wasn't clear at the time. I did have Brandon Miller as the better prospect than Scoot Henderson. So I'm claiming it, even though technically if you look back on my board, you'll say I didn't.
I mean, I had him at number 5, and I didn't even count it as a miss necessarily, though it probably is. I just think that class is really good. And all the guys that I had to get above him, which is obviously Wemby and Scoot 1 and 2, and then I had Amen Thompson and Cam Whitmore 3 and 4. Those guys could all be really, really good too going forward. They didn't make all rookie teams, or maybe might not make all rookie first team or whatever, and not going to be a finalist for rookie of the year. But this class especially, we've still got some time here to let the more underdeveloped guys catch up, the younger guys catch up to the older guys that have established themselves very quickly. So that one, I don't know if 5 is a miss per se, but it may end up being one very soon if those 2 guys or 3 guys ahead of him don't pick it up, because obviously nobody was going to have him number 1. That Wemby's got a claim to that one for the next 20 years probably.
Yeah,
But
I think he's going to be okay.
yeah, he'll be all right. I trust my evaluation in having Victor Wembanyama number one. We'll say that.
Give us another win from your side. Give us a hit.
All right, this is a big one for me. Trayce Jackson-Davis, I had number 35. I was like, this guy is worth a guaranteed deal. He is a backup center in the NBA. He's going to be good. The way that he plays, the type of person that he is, there's no way that he's not going to figure it out. And the Golden State Warriors had the exact same thought process that I did, because despite the fact he was drafted 57th, he was given a guaranteed contract. I think him and I'm blanking. Chris Livingston with the Milwaukee Bucks were the last two picks in the draft. Both of them got NBA deals, which is very rare in like current day. Like pretty much 40 and onward is two-way guys now. The teams that picked them up were like, yeah, you're good. Like normally we would have let our 58th pick be a two-way summer league guy, but Trayce Jackson-Davis, we got to sign you to a guaranteed deal. I was on the same wavelength. And 35 still may have been a little bit too low for a guy that's going to just
the rumor was
stick in the NBA.
The rumor was, if you remember, is that his agent was calling around teams telling them not to draft Jackson-Davis because they wanted him to end up in Golden State. So that was the theory about why he slipped to 58th when really he could have gone higher. I also had Jackson-Davis at 31 and he's on my list. So high fives to us for being on the Jackson-Davis train there. He had a good year after emerging in Golden State. Another one I'm taking is Keontae George. I had him 11th. I think he went 18th, and most people probably had him towards the back end outside the lottery, or like sometimes in the 20s. I think he had a really good year this year for the Utah Jazz. And I always bought his pick and roll ability. I bought his shot making. I just felt like he was kind of like still exploring how to best utilize the skill set. And I just had a faith that with his attitude and his kind of defensive approach as well, that he was going to find the way. And it's a promising early return, I would like to say. So I feel good about that one. And then my other quick hitter is, again, too early really, but Omax Prosper, who again was another one of these pre-draft hype machines. I had him ranked 37th. He went 24th. I didn't buy into the tape, and I feel like he's not anywhere near the Dallas Mavericks rotation right now. They're obviously a good team. Okay, but he is outside the rotation, playing behind like Dante Exum, Josh Green. So I feel pretty good right now about having him as a second round value.
Yeah, I mean, I loved Omax personally. I had him in like the early 20s, but I mean, a guy that plays most of his rookie season in the G League, every meaningful minute anyway in the rookie season being in the G League, it's tough to argue that was worth like the contract and draft position that they gave him, at least in this exact moment. But still got some time with these 2023 picks. But my other two hits, other than Trayce Jackson-Davis, Gigi Jackson, I had 26th, drafted 45th, another guy that I thought was clearly worth like a guaranteed contract, first round selection. I don't even think I was nearly the highest on Gigi Jackson. I know Rafael Barlow, someone whose work that we both greatly respect and have had on this podcast before, actually. Absolutely. He had Gigi Jackson, I think, in the top 10. And that was another one that's just like an absolute snipe. That was a great call from Rafael. This is why he is so good at what he does. But even myself, I think, higher on Gigi than most people, and clearly higher on him than the NBA. So that one is a win for me. Another one, I had Jet Howard 19th. He was drafted 11th. Another guy that played pretty much every meaningful minute of his rookie season in the G League. Not that that's like a bad thing per se, but if you're drafting someone 11th, I feel like if you're giving a 1-year review and they did not play one meaningful minute for you, that can't be an overwhelming positive or really a positive in any way. So I'm going to go with Jet Howard as my being in 19th. He was drafted 11th as one of my hits. I don't think he's going to be one of the best players in this draft. And there were plenty of people that had him near the top 10 or even inside it. And obviously the Magic believed in him to a similar degree as well. I
think I had him 12th. But I'm not taking the L on that one yet. I still have faith, but I kind of like your Omax Prosper. It's hard to argue right now. Let's go on to the misses. A bad one for me. This could be a Toru territory. All right. City Sissoko 15th. In a stacked draft, I had City Sissoko, who ended up going 44th on a two-way, ranked 15th. I felt the NBA cooling off on him during the pre-draft process. I wanted to trust my own evaluation. I probably shouldn't. He's struggled this year when gaining minutes, and he even struggled playing for the Austin Spurs as well. It was a rough go for Sidy Cissoko. He suddenly became like a complete non-shooter, which I watched quite a bit of his Ignite film. I thought the shot just looked smooth and looked good, and he had some games where he caught good rhythm. So, yeah, weren't you high on Sissoko too?
I was. I had him 17th. I had Leonard Miller 11th. Jalen Hood-Schifino 13. Dariq Whitehead 14. But he got hurt again, so that's not entirely my fault. Jalen Hood-Schifino is most likely a miss.
I had him 20 something, so I felt good about that when I was looking at
that. Yeah, that one's definitely good. You want to know? This actually might be worse than. No, it is worse than Walker Kessler. I had Jaime Jaquez.
Oh, I was waiting 46th. For this. I was waiting for this.
46. I thought he sucked. Like
I know you did, because
and I don't say that like ever. I thought he was like not a good NBA player. I didn't think he was athletic enough. I thought the bucket getting was just like pure like good college player that won't translate to the NBA type of thing. He didn't have the athleticism, like obviously that like I didn't think he had the athleticism that he obviously does now, like as he has shown in the NBA. He's more than capable of guarding bigger athletic dudes. So that was a huge miss. I do think, though, I mean, he was only drafted 18th, so it's not like the rest of the league anticipated him making an all-rookie first team. And I will say the type of prospect that he is needed to come in and be this good. If he came in and was bad, my 46th would have been too high. So that's where, like, that's kind of what I was like thinking of, is like, this guy's 32 years old already. He's got to figure it out like right away. And to his credit, he did, to a very high level. Like, he's so good that he is in commercials as a rookie. That's not like Wemby or Scoot. So that in alone trumps any statistic you could give, I think. So that one, I got to put my hand up. I missed on Jaime.
We were only a year or two out from the Chris Duarte, Devin Mitchells, seniors in the lottery who did well. And I think people were scarred by that. But we like peek behind the curtain. After the podcast finishes, we often just stay on and talk draft, like about random people we didn't get to, or sometimes beforehand. And I remember during the season last year, I spoke to you about Jaime Jaquez, saying I've been watching film and I liked him. And you just like scathing him, just ripping him to shreds. And I was like, I really like him. I had him ranked 27th as a first round pick, and I was too low. So yeah, it was interesting. I was wanting to finish in Jaime Jaquez because I remembered this playing out in live time last year. Another one for me, Ryan Repair, 17th last year, went 43rd in the draft. Like really seemed to slip on draft night. Like I was definitely higher than most, but I think most thought it'd go in the first round. I mean, maybe now's a good time if you can pick out any themes amongst your hits and misses. I've noticed a few when going through. I think for me, I do tend to fall in love with the international player. Sidy Cissoko, Ryan Repair, Daniel Oturu, even Killian Hayes was definitely one that kind of fell in love with a little bit. I have a nature of doing that. I also sometimes doubt the small school translation. I saw that with Trey Murphy. I saw that with Jalen Williams, like guys who kind of played as like at these tiny schools. And I just never thought, well, they can't really turn into like first round caliber talent. So I need to be quicker to adjust to that. I think sometimes it served me well not to move with maybe the waves of reporting ahead of the draft. It's been right to keep Omax Prosper where they were, or Jake LaRavia where they were, or Patrick Williams. But then at times that's also hurt me too. So the likes of Devin Vassell, Keon Johnson, even someone like Jalen Williams we talked about earlier, like they all trended up and I held firm, and maybe I should have been more open-minded. So I think those are the main themes I can pick from mine. Hard to see trying to connect the dots here, but those are the main ones that I picked out. One thing actually, off-court intel, I feel that's just come through really well. Tyrese Maxey, Halliburton, Herb Jones, Peyton Watson, Dante George, like these are all guys who had really great off-court intel, and guys who are dodgy ones, a little bit of James Bucknight, Kai Jones, Sharif Cooper, even Keon Johnson at times. Like those were ones that I've missed on. So those are my playing connect the dots of things I'm going to try and look out for next time. And small guards, less small guards.
Yes. Yeah, that I learned with Sharif Cooper. Then since then, I have not put any 6 foot or below guard that high, no matter how good they will be. I just will not ever do it again. I think the only thing that I really noticed is I'm not really great with contextualizing like players that were highly regarded as high school recruits that come in and are bad as freshmen. Like Jaden McDaniels, I think is the best example for that. He was like not good really at all at Washington, and the type of player that he was like a pull-up scorer kind of, like at least much more so than he is now in the NBA, and the role that he's found with Minnesota fits him and his skill set much better. I definitely did a very poor job contextualizing like how his athleticism may translate to the NBA, and especially to a different role, which was obvious that he was going to have from what he was at Washington. So I think that's like the big thing that I noticed.
There's a Brandon Boston Jr. and there's a Cam Reddish who were great high school recruits, had a down year, and then sucked.
Right. That I think might be the most really difficult player to evaluate. I mean, especially for me, obviously, but like a player that comes out as really highly regarded, plays like shit as a freshman, like where do you draft that guy? Because like trusting the high school film is what made us right on Tyrese Maxey. But it is also like what can make you wrong on like so many other players that just don't end up being good. So it's a very difficult balance.
Cliff Alexander.
Yeah. Oh, goodness gracious. Oh my God. That is a really good one.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, hopefully you folks enjoyed listening to this. I know this is a little kind of like inside baseball, and it's not necessarily about the Hornets, but it's always fun for us to kind of look back and try and, actually get it out there and the people and where our hits and misses are. So we will look forward to maybe updating this. Maybe we wait a few years, maybe another 2 or 3 years. We can circle back and look at our 2024, 2025 lists, and we can see if we're getting any better here. But like overall, I have to say, I don't think we've done too badly. If you talk like about some of our hits and misses there, if we were in the draft room together, I feel like we would have landed on some pretty good picks over the years. I know we've talked about before, like if we went through and did all the draft based off our big boards, the Hornets would probably be better off than they are right now. Like if they just hired me and you to make the decisions. And that's like, you can argue in the context, maybe other players wouldn't have done as well, but that's just the truth, right? It's pretty hard to argue.
Yeah, I mean, just going by our player rankings, like they would have been better off to have us on the phones making the calls to Adam Silver every June, or I guess what was like a November in 20 or a late October in 2020. But either way, we definitely would have made out pretty well in the last couple of years here.